Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different because an article was brought to my attention entitled The Untold Truth of Hunter x Hunter, which sounded ever so intriguing because I like truth. However, I then realized that the article was published on Looper, which immediately told me that the truth of Hunter x Hunter was going to be just a little bit more of a subjective exploration, and what ensued was one of the most bizarre pieces of writing that I have ever read. If I had to describe it in one sentence, it's like presenting a book report based entirely on a trailer for a movie that you've seen, the trailer, not the movie itself, that was itself a poor adaptation of the book. So today we're going to go on a journey of misinformation, misinterpretation, and great frustration that there are people out there like this who have jobs as professional writers. Because this is the untold truth of the untold truth of Hunter x Hunter. Before we dive into it though, for the sake of truth, you will need to take the red pill by subscribing to the New World Review, which will result in regular Hunter x Hunter content being uploaded straight into your YouTube feed. And yes, I suppose you could also take the blue pill and remain blissfully ignorant of all of this glorious content, but that's no way to live now, is it? So let's begin. In the world of Yoshihiro Togashi's Hunter x Hunter, the most sought after occupation is, well, you can probably guess from the title. These hunters are allowed to travel the world, apprehending the most dangerous villains, delving for forgotten treasures, and in the case of Gon Freaks, who embarked on his hunter career back in 1998, maybe find your dad and make some friends along the way. Now I think this is actually a pretty fine way to introduce Hunter x Hunter. Regardless of what it became, this is the premise, and I can't fault the writer for that. The problem is almost everything written from here onwards. While the premise of the comic is pretty straightforward, hunters hunt things and somehow wind up being in a seemingly endless series of battle tournaments. And I have to say, this is one of the most puzzling takeaways that the writer has. When I think of Hunter x Hunter, the one thing that almost never comes to mind is tournaments, and it makes me genuinely wonder if the author is mistaking Hunter x Hunter with Yu Yu Hakusho, Togashi's previous series, which is much more characterized and stereotyped with the tournament stigma. I mean, I guess at a stretch you could say that Hunter x Hunter has two tournament style things, once during the Hunter exam's final phase and the short-lived Heaven's Arena run. But at the same time, neither of those were even tournaments in the classical sense. But from there, nothing else in the series even comes close to taking on that format. You know, you have the Zoldyck family, York New City, Greed Island, Chimera Antark, the Chairman election, the Succession War, and it's all just nothing to do with tournaments. And all of that together is about 95% of the series right there, so I'm already quite perplexed, but let's continue. If you've read or watched Hunter x Hunter, and we hope you have because this article would be a pretty weird way to get started on it, then you might have noticed something a little unusual about the way the story is structured. It's essentially a series of increasingly challenging tournaments that reveal the strongest people in the world, only to have the next tournament reveal someone stronger. So I have both read and watched Hunter x Hunter, and I will concur that this article would be a weird way to get started on it, because the really unusual thing about the article is that it completely misrepresents Hunter x Hunter. It starts with the Hunter exam, in which only 1 out of every 10,000 applicants is accepted, and even those are winnowed down by phases that leave only 24 applicants by the time the last one starts. And we just want to pause on this statement for a second because it is factually incorrect. By the time the final phase of the Hunter exam began, there were only 9 applicants left, which I find to be a really interesting error to make, since the final phase was a weird tournament, which seems to be the one thing that this writer pays super close attention to, so I think that's a weird error to make. And it's almost as if the writer maybe doesn't know what they're talking about and is confusing the final phase with the 4th phase. And usually I wouldn't be quite this petty, but at the same time, if you're a paid writer publishing very strong opinions on a gigantic mega platform, then the very least you should be able to do is get the facts right. This is the untold truth of Hunter x Hunter after all, and right here we have a blatant lie of Hunter x Hunter. Then it turns out there's a super secret final part of the exam that happens at the Heaven's Arena, which is full of fighters so strong that even hunters can't beat them. And here we have some more delightful misinformation. The secret part of the exam does indeed exist, but it is not held at Heaven's Arena. Gon and Killua went to Heaven's Arena of their own accord to train, at which point Gon encountered Wing and began the secret phase. But every other applicant completed the secret phase in isolated conditions, like Kurapika, who did his just randomly in the woods. There is no tournament aspect of the secret phase. And I think there's also a pretty fundamental misunderstanding of what hunters are here, because almost none of them participate in Heaven's Arena. In fact, Gon and Hisoka are the only two to do so. Killua technically, because he became a hunter later. But if hunters actually did participate in Heaven's Arena, then they would wreck 99% of the competitors, because that was one of the key themes of Heaven's Arena, that these fighters were like the Nen rejects of the world. They weren't ready for it like Guido, or those who completely misused it like Castro. And all of that is to say, once again, that this writer probably didn't pay too much attention to the series that they feel so confident about explaining. The reason behind this structure is pretty simple. Fighting tournaments have a long and proud history in shonen manga, because they're one of the easiest ways to introduce new adversaries and get straight into into the big fight scenes without having to worry about things like complex plotting or character motivation, and that's not a criticism. And while I do think that many fans would disagree with that last statement, sure, let's say it's not a criticism, but that still doesn't make it true. And at this point, I just legitimately cannot comprehend the author's insistence that Hunter x Hunter is a never-ending series of tournaments. I did say before that 95% of the series has nothing to do with a tournament, but that is obvious hyperbole, so let's actually work it out. And we will be the most generous we possibly can be as well. Let's say that both the Hunter Exam and Heaven's Arena count as tournament arcs in their entirety, which you can certainly argue that they don't, but the Hunter Exam is 38 chapters and Heaven's Arena is 20 chapters. So together that's 58 chapters of potential tournament-related content. Meanwhile, Hunter x Hunter as it stands is 390 chapters long. So that 58 chapters of alleged tournament content doesn't even make up 15% of the overall series. Yet the writer just goes on and on and on about this never-ending tournament structure. It really is one of the most baffling things I've ever read, and I can't quite think of a reasonable explanation for it, because other parts of the article do make it clear that the writer at least made it to York New City and even Greed Island, possibly even further. So at this point, the writer does know that what they're saying is simply factually incorrect, but they're saying it anyway because of reasons. The best explanation I have is that it would be a condition to activate their Nen ability, which would make more sense. But speaking of, I am very excited to hear their thoughts on Nen, a power system that can be quite confusing even when you are paying attention. Speaking of Nen, let's talk about one of the most notable and bizarre plot elements that frequently crops up in the series. In its most basic form, Nen is a technique that allows people to tap into a sort of life force that runs through all living things, giving those who master it strange, seemingly magical abilities that can take forms as varied as sensing things or clouding their adversaries' minds, or even shooting out lightning. Those users skilled enough to manipulate this force are called Jedi Knights. No, wait, sorry, they're just called Nen users. Got the notes mixed up there. And I do believe that last part. I think the writer did indeed get their notes mixed up at all stages of the article, because the only other explanation would be that they simply did not really watch or read Hunter x Hunter. And not only that, but after completely skimping over the series, they believe that they have the right to be snarky about it. Like the Jedi Knight comment, stuff like that is kind of infuriating for me to read, because not only is it making it clear that the writer has next to no knowledge on the subject of Nen, but they're also making it clear that they don't care to know either. Because it's one thing to make a simple mistake. I have made a whole ton of them on this channel because Hunter x Hunter is complicated, layered, and nuanced, especially when it comes to Nen. So much more so than you could ever comprehend on a first reading or viewing. But then again, it's a completely different thing to see Killua develop an electricity-based Nen ability and then deliberately conflate that with the Force because, well, that's another thing you've seen, and you probably didn't take in too much of that either, which is probably why it's just all the same to you. And to be fair, I guess, every power system will act in the exact same manner if you don't pay attention to it. I mean, nobody ever tell him about devil fruits in One Piece, because he'll take one look at an L and call him a Nen user or a Force user. It doesn't matter. He makes lightning and it's all the same thing. Nen and its users have been exhaustively categorized over the course of the series with 6 types of users: enhancers, transmuters, emitters, conjurers, manipulators, and specialists, and complicated mathematical formulas used by fans for determining how powerful someone is. So we have some more snarky comments at both the beginning and the end here. And first up, I find the use of the word exhaustive very telling, because it reveals the author's complete and utter unwillingness to engage with the media presented. The use of that word gives me the distinct impression that every time some new information regarding Nen was dropped, they would have just thought, oh, words, how exhausting, moving on from that. But at the end here, he also makes a reference to allegedly fan formulas for power determination, and he links to an article on the Hunterpedia, specifically a part that details the equations regarding Nen reinforcement, which I need to emphasize are not fan-made. This is entirely Togashi's madness, which is actually quite exhaustively detailed in the series that you claim to have either read or watched. And furthermore, no fans actually use these, especially the reinforcement Nen, because it's only relevant for very, very specific cases when comparing enhancement abilities between differing affinities. And if there is a group of people talking about that at great length, then look guys, I know that Hunter x Hunter has been on hiatus for 2 years now, but surely we can still find something better to talk about than Nen reinforcement. It's worth noting that like so many other things in the world of comics and manga, Nen has an evil opposite, this dark side if you will. Hey, that's catchy. It's called On, and was featured prominently in the 2014 movie Hunter x Hunter: The Last Mission. And snarky Star Wars dark side comments aside, quite frankly, it's not worth mentioning at all, because the Hunter x Hunter films are not canon and On never makes an appearance in the actual series, which I only bring up because once again this article is called The Untold Truth of Hunter x Hunter, and this is the latest piece of misinformation in a block of writing allegedly dedicated to conveying the truth. Now with all of that said, the article isn't all bad. When the writer is talking about the background of the series, like the hiatus struggle and Togashi's relationship with Naoko Takeuchi, that's all really good and fun stuff to read. And it's also very appropriate given the title of the article. However, when explaining Hunter x Hunter itself, this is an utter dereliction of duty, and quite frankly, a profoundly embarrassing mess. And I obviously don't want to dox this guy, but he is an actual writer. Like, he puts words to page as a profession. He gets paid to do this. Mainly for Western comics, and I believe that he is something of a Batman expert in particular. All of which is very cool, by the way. That sounds like quite an amazing profession. However, I really do think you should probably stick to that area. Because I imagine that if I made a video titled The Untold Truth of Batman without ever having performed a passing glance of research and just making snarky comments, then he would probably rip me apart. And quite rightfully as well, mind you, because I know hardly anything about Batman. Certainly not enough to offer an article presenting the untold truth behind the series. I do, however, know about Hunter x Hunter though, more than enough to know that there is very little truth in this article claiming to be conveying truth. It reads more as highly subjective ramblings of a flawed experience of a series that the writer clearly did not enjoy going through, sprinkled in with some fun facts about background production, and wrapped in a clickbait titled package. With that said, it is still far from the worst written article out there. All of those honors belong quite firmly to CBR because, oh dear. But what do you guys think? Please do leave your thoughts in the comments below or even join my Discord server. And if you're keen for some more Hunt x Hunter content, then please do go and check out some of my other videos or even subscribe to the channel for regular Hunt x Hunter glory delivered straight into your YouTube feed. But for now, this has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.